Hey everyone, Dory Lobel here. Hope you're doing fantastic. Welcome to my studio here in LA. Now in this mini lesson, I'm really excited to show you one of my favorite techniques for blues rock soloing. And this is something I've been doing for years. I forget who showed it to me in the first place, but recently I stumbled onto another little addition that you can make to it that makes it even more useful and practical. So let's get started. Okay, so to get us up to speed, we're going to start where all good things start. First position, minor pentatonic, blues scale, blues box as it's often called. We all know it and love it. Okay, now I slid up and down a little bit, but basically in this position. And I'll talk about a lot of the different things I was doing here. Now, by the way, I'm tuned down a half step, so this looks like A minor, but it sounds like A flat minor. I'll put some graphics on the screen, but just for fun, you should try detuning one guitar down a half step. It's always a nice thing to have around, whether you're playing live and you have to change the keys, or just for fun, you know, you want to play along to your Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan records, etc. Now, another quick thing to say about the blues box, so to speak, the first position blues scale. I don't know about you guys, but for me it was obviously one of the first things I learned that made me feel like I can actually play rock music. It's revelatory, you know, you all of a sudden hear all your favorite songs, all this kind of stuff. And what happened to me is, after a while, I've been playing for 25 years, you get to a point where you develop a certain amount of guilt about overusing the box, the blues box, because you want to go up and down the neck. No, you want to be able to... And of course, it's really, really important. You need to be able to move up and down the neck. Need is a big word. It's nice to be able to do that to express yourself. But what happens to a lot of players, and definitely for me, you know, I had a hump where I was trying not to play too much in the box. But now I'm actually, after playing for so long, I'm actually back. I love it. It's one of the best spots on the guitar to play. And I'll show you a really cool trick. It's not the main thing in this video, but really useful, that I got from Stevie Ray Vaughan. What he does often is he'll use this position, for instance, A flat in this case, fifth fret, and then he'll use the exact same position 12 frets up here, which is literally exactly the same. Now, initially, it looks like a little kind of caveman, really simple thing to do, and you don't want to do it because you want to move smoothly up and down the neck. But aside from being really easy and sounding cool and visually easy to grasp, it looks really impressive, ironically, to people who are not guitar players. For us guitar players, we say, oh yeah, he's in first position, whatever. But we don't want to play only for guitar players. We want to play for people who just love music. And actually, the big movement up and down the neck ends up looking, if you kind of get out of your guitar player state of mind, it looks really impressive. Now, what Stevie does is stuff like this. See, so I'm basically jumping back and forth. Super cool trick. Now, again, it looks pretty impressive, and I'm just jumping, doing the exact same thing. See? And then you can go. That's really cool. So instead of just going, I'm just literally sliding 12 frets down, so it's the same exact thing, an octave lower. Okay, now, that was a bonus little lesson. I'll learn how to stay on track more as we go, but this is a really important thing. I'll probably do a whole lesson on that as well. Okay, so we're back from our little Stevie Ray Vaughan detour, but don't forget what I showed you there. It's really useful. And let's jump back into our blues box here. And just to tell you what I'm going to be teaching you in this lesson, it's a bend that you can do within the pentatonic scale that's not super common and really, really useful. But before I do that, I'm going to very, very quickly cover the most popular bends in the blues box. And I'm guessing most of you guys and girls already know this. This is the first things people usually learn. So if we have, this is our blues box, that's our 1, our root, we have a flat 3, and a 4, and we bend from the 4 to the 5. Classic bend. And then we also have the flat 5 here. So instead of bending all the way here, we can go. And I'm going to bend to the 5, and then to the flat 5. 5, let's see if I can do that. And then you can also bend to the 5, down to the flat 5, down to the 4. Really cool stuff. So that's really useful, and I'm guessing most of you guys and girls know it. That's one of the first things you learn. The classic, you know, Chuck Berry. Okay, now the second most famous bend, I would guess, or maybe it's the first one, from the flat 7, this guy, to the 1. Okay, classic again. Also, you can do the same thing to the flat 7. It's more of a passing note in this sense, so. But again, you can basically, anytime you have a bend, you can explore the infinite number of notes between those two notes. Because once you're bending, there's an endless amount of notes. That's what makes a guitar more like a vocal versus a piano, where you just have the two notes. And another bend, this is more advanced, it's from the flat 3, from this note, up to the 4. So, flat 3 to the 4, flat 7 to the 1, 4 to the 5. Now, if we're looking at it not from a music theory perspective with the numbers of the notes and the functions of the notes, we're looking at basically visually, like a lot of us start out. We have the pentatonic scale, and basically it's the right hand, the higher note on each string. You just bend that. Yeah, I was a little sharp there, you see? So this guitar is tuned down a half step, so it's a little less tension, but that's part of the fun with Les Pauls. It's a little more sloppy. Now, this is a really, really important thing to practice and just really explore. Don't feel like you need to jump around, like I mentioned before, and go to other positions. There's a world of music that you can make and amazing solos just within this position. Now, the trick I want to show you is this one. I showed you this bend, which I said is more advanced, which is from the flat 3 to the 4. Now, what if you want to do it here? This is your flat 3, and this is your flat 3. It's the same note. So if you want to bend from this note to the 4, it's this. See, I keep going a little sharp, which is okay. I'm happy that you guys see it. That it's an ongoing thing. When you switch guitars, sometimes you have to really calibrate your intonation. Now, this bend is pretty difficult, and you're bending with your first finger, and this is I would guess that a lot of people watching this don't do this. I think I learned it from Stevie Ray Vaughan or Albert King. Albert King does it a lot. Now, I'll tell you a little story. When I moved here to LA, I went to the Musicians Institute, and before school started, I had a few weeks to get ready, and I practiced so much that I feel like I sprained my finger or something. That it was fine, but it just felt a little painful. So I didn't want to do this bend all the time. It felt very like it hurt every time I did it. So I wanted to find a trick, how to get that sound without bending with the first finger, a full step over here. And drum roll, what I'm about to show you is the point of this whole lesson. So the trick is very simple. Instead of bending from the flat 3 from this note to the 4, you bend from the natural 3, the major third, which is instead of you bend from here with your second finger, middle finger. Now, what this does is twofold. First of all, you're only bending a half step, a lot easier, and you're bending with your second finger, which you can anchor with your first finger, so you have a lot more force here. It's almost as easy as bending with your third finger. So it's a much easier bend, and the sound of it is this. Now, the trick here is, maybe you've heard this sound if you're playing more of a major, Mixolydian type sound. But the trick is to make it, and that's basically like cheating. You make it sound like you're bending from the flat third. So you bend up from the major third, but then as you go down, you hit the bottom note, the flat 3. So you see, and that almost sounds the same as doing this. And you can do stuff that, again, I keep mentioning Stevie Ray Vaughan, but he got this stuff from Albert King, and he's one of the kings, no pun intended, of this type of phrasing. And you can go like this. So I'm basically just bending from the major third to the 4 and keep going up to the flat 5 and to the 5. So you go. So basically it's like this. 4, I'm bending up to the 4, all the way to the 5, back to the flat 3. So see, so it's really cool to track. Once you get into kind of advanced bending stuff, imagine if you had to chart it on piano roll, you know, if you guys ever get into recording music on the computer, to see what the note is doing exactly. So right now I'm basically going. You see, so I'm tricking the ear of the listener to think that I actually made this bend from here, from the flat 3. And I don't know, maybe you guys aren't as excited about this sound as I am, but for me, this is something, after playing for years and doing all the standard, it was such a revelation to finally be able to do this. Once you have 3 bends, getting another extra one, that's a gigantic thing, you know, when we're playing rock and roll. Okay, so that was the first half of the lesson. Killer lick, bending from the major third to the 4, but tricking the listener thinking that you're bending from the flat 3, which is a harder bend and sounds kind of a little bit more mean. So again, it's this. That's a very John Mayer thing. Okay? And again, killer, super useful. Now, second half of the lesson, which is the same thing basically, but that's something that I discovered that I've never done before. Same concept, but first we have to cover a really, really amazing bend that I'm going to cover in another lesson because it's too cool not to. It's like the ultimate ninja bend. And this bend is this. I probably made a horrible face. It's really difficult to do it on this string and my finger hurts. See? You're bending 4 frets, 2 whole steps on the high E string. Now, it's extremely difficult. I don't think anyone should do it. I used to do it sometimes when I had guitars that were more set up with lighter strings. Now there's really no reason to do it, so I just avoid that sound. If I want to get that sound, I do it on the B string. I just jump up a position, 2 positions to this position of pentatonic. So instead of going, I go, which is 4th position pentatonic. And same concept. Instead of going like this, I go like this, same notes. But here it's a lot easier to bend because there's less tension and resistance from the other strings on the B string. So you can go a little sharp there. And by the way, that's another thing. You see, I was trying to do it here, and it was so much resistance that I anticipated that I need to apply more force than I actually do. So my bend came up a little sharp. So that's something that you always do. You kind of recalibrate your hands to the guitar. You feel it out a little bit. And luckily in this specific bend, even if you get a little sloppy, it can still sound cool, like kind of Jimmy Page-ish, you know, he does a lot of that stuff. And there's a lot of gold to be mined within that range of bend. Just make sure that you're calibrated and you're listening for it so you have control of it. So if it's sloppy, it's fine, but you don't want to sound super tight and perfect and in tune and come out sloppy if that's not your intention. Now, again, so it's bending from here. I'll cover this in another lesson because this zone is like the B.B. King zone. Really, really cool stuff, but that's not our lesson. Our lesson is to get that sound within our first simple blues box position. And how do you do that? So I showed you that it's really, really difficult to do this. I'm not going to try to do it. See, again, it's hard. Pardon the horrible faces. And the trick is, instead of doing it, and that's what I tried just a few weeks ago, instead of bending from here, from the flat 3, I'm going to do the same concept that I did before. Just trick the listener and not let him know that I'm bending from a half step up, which makes my trip much less high of a bend. Yeah, it's only a step and a half instead of 2 whole steps. And it sounds like this. See, it sounds almost the same. It sounds almost the same as doing it. And it's a lot easier. I can do this because instead of bending, every time I do it, I feel something breaking in my hand. This is easy. And again, and you're tricking the listener because as you're going down, just jump here so they don't hear this sound. This sounds weird because I'm on the major note, but it sounds. You see, this is a really kind of grown-up sound. It's really cool. Okay, so quick recap. We learned 2 killer bends that you can do in the first position blues box, and they sound really difficult and unique, and you don't hear a lot of people doing them, but they're actually quite easy. This one is super easy, from the major 3rd to the 4. And the second one is from this guy. So instead of bending from here, you can do this bend, by the way, from the flat 3rd to the major 3rd, which is the ultimate blues sound. But then you want to go higher. So I'm jumping up a fret.